Good evening, campers, and welcome aboard the Starship Nightwish. I'm Commander Exorcist, and it's Tuesday. It's time for another look at what's happening in Galnet. But before we get started on that, I just want to point out, you may have noticed that I finally upgraded, reached a critical mass with my recording setup. So I have a new lighting scheme. Finally something decent. It doesn't look like I'm holding a lamp in my lap anymore while I'm recording, so that's a lot of fun. Makes it a little bit easier to get things done around here. So, it's been a slow couple of weeks in terms of news. I gotta admit, I'm a little disappointed in some of the news. I expected more, especially with a war going on, but it looks like our war narrative is moving a little bit slowly. So, today's article, I was gonna talk about the Marlinists, but this one came out, and this is kind of a continuation of my presidential cage match video that I did about 2 weeks ago. So we're gonna read through this. I got some thoughts on it that'll be pretty obvious, and from what I've seen as far as reactions on social media, I think that a lot of people kind of agree with my sentiments on this. So federal eyes are on congressional debate. It's a very vague article title, but we're going to find out that Hudson's planning something. We're going to talk about that. So this came out today, the 14th of March, 3309 on Galnet, and we're going to go through this and talk a little bit about it. So, preliminary motions on the forthcoming Hudson contravention vote have begun in federal Congress. The proposal, named after President Zachary Hudson's call to suspend the 77th Amendment to the Federal Accord, is a point of significant contention. If approved, Hudson would be eligible to run for another term in this year's presidential election, breaking with centuries of constitutional law. Okay. So, I want to get something out there right away. The proposal itself does not make Hudson president of the Federation automatically. That's how they sell it to you. That's what they're going to say to you. Those are the things that you're going to hear. The people that are proponents for this modification, for the suspension of the 77th Amendment. Good Lord. So it's not saying that Hudson will continue to be the president. What it is, it eliminates the two-term rule where Hudson has an opportunity to run again. The issue is going to be that kind of unlimited power sense where you're running the risk of letting someone like Hudson, who has his pluses and minuses. I'm not a big fan of him, but rule forever, potentially. And so what you end up having is an empire. You have an imperial fiefdom, essentially. And so it's a very, very, it is a contentious discussion, and it should be. It should be. It's not something to be taken lightly. Yeah, interesting. Zachary Hudson wants to continue being president, and I can't speak for Zachary. I don't know his mind. I'm not him. But I'm sure that the supporters probably looked to that continuity. Middle of a war, lots of bad things going on, people dying everywhere, their stations burning, the Federation is facing an existential crisis along with the other three superpowers. So it kind of makes sense that you'd want to keep your leadership intact. Oh boy. So, supporters of the proposal, led by Hudson's cabinet, point to the ongoing conflict with the Thargoids as a primary reason to vote in favor. With the significant escalation in Thargoid aggression and the loss of hundreds of systems, it has been argued that a change of leadership would weaken the Federation's ability to defend itself. I should have just read the article. This is just what I said. That's exactly what I said. That's what they're proposing. And on the surface, it makes sense. You want to keep your leadership intact, especially if your leadership is not is being effective. And For what we can see, federal leadership is being as effective as federal leadership can be. It's just like the empire. The empire leadership is as effective as imperial leadership can be given the circumstances. And so it's, I'm not going to say that I agree with it, but it's a reasonable approach. Opponents have called the move a dictatorial tactic, which uses the fear of alien attack to influence public opinion, and it does. That's a very important point. People are not thinking straight. They're thinking their thinking is based on fear. They're fearful for their lives. They're fearful for the continuation of their way of life. And so, yeah, it makes sense. Felicia Winters, Liberal candidate and current shadow president, recently discussed this further during an interview with the Federal Free Press. In these difficult times, we cannot forget who we are or what makes the Federation great. The 77th Amendment was established in 2594 and has defined the presidential length of service ever since. This structure not only provides clarity to the people who use their vote to inform federal governance, but also to teach each individual entrusted with the honor of the presidency. To change it now would send a message that we have lost faith in the Federation's political mechanism. Okay. And we'll go ahead and finish it out. The official vote on the Hudson contravention motion is expected to take place next week. Now, what Felicia Winters is essentially saying here is that when someone is elected president, they are given a limited amount of time to make the changes that they want to make. You have a finite amount of time to make the impact that you want to make on the Federation and on the political landscape of the galaxy. And so having a term limit is an encouragement for people to do their best. You only have one shot at this. So you've been elected. Get in office, get done what you need to do, make things better, do the best you can, and then move on. If we were to eliminate term limits, you're looking at leaders that are just there forever. And if you're a leader in charge of an organization or, say, a superpower, and you're not going to be replaced, well, what's the point? What's the point to put in any real effort? You run the risk of stagnation. And, we saw that a long time ago throughout history. You have politicians, career politicians, people who are served in Congress, people who served in leadership positions for decades. And they knew they were not going to get removed from those positions, so what did they do? They did nothing. All they had to do was pay a little bit of lip service over here, a little bit of lip service over there, keep this side happy enough to where it doesn't kill this side, and then you're good. You can just continue to do what you're doing, which a lot of times is nothing. And that's kind of what she's talking about here. That's the risk that we run when you eliminate these kind of these term limits for people like Hudson. I'm not saying Hudson's a bad guy, but absolute power absolutely corrupts. Absolute. I mean, he can be the greatest guy in the world, but if he has absolute power and is stuck there forever, eventually the rot's going to set in. And you don't need that kind of leadership stagnation, especially in a wartime situation. You want leadership that is invested, that is motivated, that is concentrated, and ready to do what's necessary to sustain that superpower's way of life. Interesting. I hope this doesn't go through. I hope that I'm gonna call it now. I think that it probably will go through, and I wouldn't be surprised if Hudson wins a third term. And I hope not, because I think that's lazy. I think that's outside of character. I think that's lazy storytelling. Because I think that it's time for Hudson to move on. It would be nice to see retired President Hudson doing something phenomenal while somebody else takes the reins. Although, unfortunately, our choices to replace him are not much better. Not much better than the current president. So yeah, we'll have to see what happens there. And I don't know. It could go either way. But I think that historical precedent should stand. And I think that we'll be wasting our time to rescind this amendment, because it's just going to turn the Federation into a new empire. You're going to have two empires, the actual empire and the Federation, with a lifetime president. Because if he wins the third term, he's just going to stick around because people are going to get used to it. They're just going to keep voting for him. As long as he keeps money in their pockets and food on the table, doesn't matter how bad he is, they're going to keep voting for him. It's just how it is. Thank you, everybody. These are the Patreon supporters. These are the disciples. It's these people. Thank you for your support. You guys keep the channel running. You keep us ad-free. You also purchase new lights, so thank you for that. And I just really appreciate the support that I have from all of you, the disciples here, and just in general. So thank you for watching. And we will be back next week to see what happens, because I'm sure that there's more coming. The Thargoids are still out there. There's some kind of balance change coming this week, so we'll see what happens at that point. Yeah. Fly safe, Commanders. Watch your backs, and I will see you out there. 07.